Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our virtual field trip today with the Humane Society. My name is Melissa. I am with MEF, who's hosting the field trip, but I am not an expert on animals. As much as I like them, I don't know very much about them. So I am going to turn it over to Miss Kat, who is the expert on animals and works at the Humane Society, and she is going to lead the field trip for us today. Miss Kat.
Thank you so much, Melissa, and thank you everyone for having me and for your interest in learning more about animals and specifically our organization, which is one of a few different animal shelters in our area, but we are Humane Society Silicon Valley. And I'm going to go ahead. I have a little presentation to share with you. Since we can't be together in person at the shelter like we normally would be, I'm going to try to have as many visuals as possible to give the sense that you are at the shelter with me. So our animal community center, which is just a fancy way of saying our animal shelter, but we call it that because we do like to consider it as a community space. It's open to the community and we love to have people there, especially families and kids. But we're located in Milpitas, so we're just north of San Jose. And oops, my slideshow isn't working for me here. But as Melissa mentioned, my name is Kat. I actually used to work in our youth programs department doing education activities with kids just like you, except of course we got to do it in person, which was really fun. Now I'm the manager of donor engagement and impact. And I mainly put this slide up so I had an excuse to share my own pets with you. So this was our Christmas family photo. And the little black dog there, she made an appearance while we were waiting for folks to arrive. That's Tess. And then down below is my bunny, BB, who I actually just adopted from Humane Society Silicon Valley last summer. And you might hear Tess taking a drink of water in the background. So sorry if that's a little loud. Okay. So I'm not sure how many of you have been to our facility before, but if you have, you probably wouldn't forget it. First time I ever walked in, my jaw was on the floor. I thought I was at Animal Shelter Disneyland. And we are actually the oldest animal shelter in Santa Clara Valley. So even though there are lots of great organizations around and we work with many of them, we have been here the longest, and that is for 92 years. So we were founded in 1929. As you can imagine, things were a lot different back in 1929. The animals that were around us were different. The kinds of jobs people had were different. It was there were no skyscrapers or big tech companies. And most of our lives revolved around agriculture. So for that reason, you might be surprised to learn that the first type of animal that we sheltered back in 1929 was actually horses. So the best way I can think to describe how we got started was to say we were a retirement home for working horses. After they got old and they weren't able to work on farms anymore, which is, as you can imagine, really hard physical work, they were able to come to Humane Society Silicon Valley and just live the rest of their lives in retirement, like we would hope all hardworking people get to do someday. So it's pretty interesting to know just how far we've come. Of course, today life is a lot different. I don't think you will be surprised by the first three animals I show you that we work with primarily. So those include dogs. And when I say dogs, I mean all kinds of dogs. So these pictures you can see we range from the little guys like Blackjack to the big dogs like Frosty and everywhere in between. We just love dogs. Obviously, we also love our feline friends. So cats are an animal we work with a lot. And a fun fact is actually that cats, although we work with lots and lots of other animals, cats are probably the animal that need our help the most in our area, because there's a lot of homeless cats around, and we're doing our best to make sure that as many of those kitties get homes as possible, and the ones that are going to stay living outside, that they're as healthy and safe as possible. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then of course, I think you will know that I'm very fond of this next type of animal, rabbits. So we certainly have our fair share of bunnies come through, and you can say either one. I always have students ask me if bunny is wrong. It's not, it's just a sort of friendlier, sillier way of saying it. So we see lots of cute bunnies, including for you basketball fans, one of our most recent rabbits was named LeBun James. So we have a lot of fun giving silly names to the animals in our care while they wait for their new homes. And then I would be totally wrong to forget mentioning our more pocket-sized friends. You would never want to put these in your pocket. That wouldn't be very nice, but we sometimes say that jokingly because they are so small. So our pocket pets include guinea pigs, rats, hamsters, your occasional chinchilla. We've seen a lot of little guys come through, and they also make really wonderful pets too.
We have hamsters.
Oh, right. Yeah, hamsters.
Not hamsters. We have one.
Hamsters actually are one of the types of animals that do best on their own, that don't want a friend. They tend to like to be solo, so that makes total sense. All righty. So I'm going to show you guys a quick video. And my intention with this video is to help you feel like you are with me. We're in a big group walking together, and we're at the animal shelter. So there's no sound in this, only because I want to be able to tell you about things as we see them. But if we were there in person, you can bet we'd hear lots of dogs barking, we'd hear kids laughing, we'd hear people on the phone, and adoptions happening. It would be a really fun, busy environment. So just know that this is the closest I can do, but I can't wait to have you guys there in person someday so you can see what it's like. All righty. So getting started, this is our adoptions desk in our front lobby. So if you came to adopt a pet from Humane Society Silicon Valley, that's where you would go to talk to a counselor. Right here is our rabbitat, and that's one of our behaviorists walking in front, Matthew. He's wonderful. Over here, we have our dog adoptions areas. So all these rooms, they're little dog apartments. So dogs get their own rooms. They have windows. Sometimes you can see that the dogs might be a little shy, and we want to give them privacy, so they have a curtain on the window. But a lot of the dogs really enjoy actually having people walk by too. This is Matthew again in one of our food prep kitchens, and he's taking notes. You can see all these little notes. It shows which dog is where, and he can say, I went and took this dog on a walk at this time. So we know that that dog got lots of good attention today. And then here's Taylor. She's one of my coworkers, and she is doing a virtual adoption, which is something we've started doing since the pandemic started. And people really want to adopt animals since they're stuck at home, which is so cool. But of course, it's a little bit different. So we often have them meet the animal over video for the first time before they meet in person, just to make sure it's the right fit. Here we have a wonderful woman who had done that virtual adoption process, and she's here to pick up her new dog. You can see our dog parks out there where they're walking to one of the outdoor doggy enclosures. So it's a little exercise area, and she's gonna go pick up her dog there, and there he is. Really cute little English bulldog there. So like I said before, we get all kinds of dogs. We get purebred dogs, mixed breed dogs, little dogs, big dogs. And she has a bag of treats in her hand, which is very smart. It's a great way to get your new pet to feel comfortable with you. And they're just leashing up to head out to the car so they can head home and start their wonderful life together. And again, you can get a kind of a nice look at our dog parks over there, where we also have doggy play groups. So dogs that are living in the shelter, we want to make sure they have fun, right? That they're not just stuck inside all the time. And now we've moved over to our cat adoption area. So just like the dogs, the cats have their own rooms. They've got windows. You can see how much fun furniture, hiding places, toys they have. One of our volunteers is in there. You can see her down at, there she is. She's actually a cat socializer. So her whole volunteer job is to come and play with cats and pet them. Sounds like a pretty fun job to me. And now we've moved to my favorite room in the entire shelter. This is our sunshine room. And this is a giant big room where we house cats that like living with other cats. So if you have a cat at home and you knew you wanted to adopt another cat that would like a cat friend, this would be a great place to start. They have a little patio where they can get fresh air and sunshine. They have lots of cool stuff to climb on, hide behind, toys to play with. And then this is their kitchen. So this is where their meals get prepared, where we do dishes once the dishes are dirty, clean toys. And of course, just like we saw before, we take really careful notes on how animals are doing while they're living with us. So here again, you can see this whole list that shows which cat is where and what they've experienced that day. Taylor, again, doing yet another virtual adoption, this time for a cat. And she appears very excited about something. I'm not sure why she's gesturing so much, but she's excited. And then this is another very cool area. Some cats, like I mentioned before, might not be able to live happily inside someone's home. So they might be what we call a garden cat. And that means that they do belong to someone. There's a person who loves and cares for them, but their life is probably going to be spent outside on someone's property. And so this garden has special fencing so the cats can't get out of the garden. They're safe inside. But we also want to make sure that they are able to transition in a way that makes them feel safe and secure to living in this specific area. Last but not least, this is our pet store. We call it the whole pet store. And if you came to adopt an animal, or if you were just stopping by to visit, you could get pretty much anything you needed for your pet here. We're going to talk a little bit later about all the things that pets need to be happy and healthy. Some of those things you can buy here in the pet store. And then of course, other things are a little less solid. So things like, love and attention, that can't be bought. That can only be provided by a person. But here you could get all the cool stuff that they would need, all their gear. And that is our little tour. So again, if anybody has questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I will do my best to answer them as we go. But that is our first little introduction. And I also want to talk a little bit about, oops, we're doing that twice apparently. So sometimes a big question that people have is how animals end up in our shelter, right? And we are a nonprofit animal shelter. So what that means is that we primarily get animals in 3 different ways. I want you to think about that. Where the heck would all these animals come from? These animals that didn't have homes that are coming to us to find a home. Mainly, we have animals come in that have been lost. They've been found outside, right? They don't have a collar. They don't seem to know where they are. Maybe they're a little scared and we're unable to figure out who the owner is. So those are what we call stray animals. And those animals might come to the shelter. We would hold them for a little while to give if they had an owner, their owner would have a chance to come look for them. But after a certain amount of time has passed, we would then put them up for adoption so they could have a new start. We also sometimes have animals come in from their owners. So sometimes, even though people love their pets, something might happen in their life that prevents them from keeping them. But they're so devoted to their pet that they are going to do the best they can to make sure that they get another home that loves them just as much. So a lot of times we work with owners who unfortunately can't keep their pets anymore, and we'll help them find a new home. The last way that we get animals, and this is actually the main way our animal shelter has animals come in, and we actually get them from other shelters. That might sound a little funny, but the truth is that California is a really big state, and not everywhere has as many people who want to adopt as we do here in the Bay Area. So we've got lots of people and not so many animals that are being found as strays or being turned in as owner surrenders. So we go to shelters in other areas where they have too many animals and not enough adopters. And we'll take animals from those shelters and bring them to the Bay Area where there are a lot of people lined up just waiting to adopt a pet. So that's our way. It is helpful for us, and it's also helpful for the other shelters. So partnership is a really important part of animal sheltering. And I think you probably know that from your work in school with your fellow students, that teamwork really does help make things better a lot of the time. Okay, so there are a few different reasons you might want to come visit us other than just to look at all the cute animals that we have. The main one, of course, is if you wanted to adopt a pet. And we talked quite a bit about that during our little tour just now. But you might also want to access some other services. So maybe you need to come to our medical center where members of the public, so people just like you guys, can come and get a specific surgery for your pet. It's called a spay or neuter surgery, and that just depends on if they're a boy or a girl. And this is a surgery we recommend for all pets so that they don't have babies anymore and contribute to overpopulation. It also has some health benefits for our pets as well. You can also come get low-cost pet vaccinations. So you guys probably have heard a lot about vaccines recently, especially, but it's just like you would get when you're babies, right? You get all these shots that help to keep you from getting certain illnesses. So those are really important, and we want to make sure that everyone can afford them. So other things you might do, you could come take a dog training class. Maybe you have a brand new puppy, and that puppy needs to learn how to be social with other puppies, and you need to learn how to communicate with the puppy. That's a dog training class would be a really cool way for you to bond with your pet. And then last but not least, I want to mention that we're a place where you can ask for help. So if you know about an animal that needs help, or a family that needs help, maybe that, they are having a hard time buying food for their pet or something like that is going on, we're a really good place to come talk to somebody, and we can help find resources to make sure that animal or that family gets the services they need to be happy and healthy. So again, lots of things we do at the Animal Community Center. Looks like someone has a dog that's 4 years older than them. Oh, wow. I would imagine that dog is very wise, given how old it is. All right, I am going to go ahead and turn the floor over to a very, very special person that I'm super excited to introduce to you. Her name is Dr. Andrea Moore. She's one of my coworkers, and most importantly, she's one of the veterinary doctors, I should say, who takes care of the animals that come into our shelter. So Dr. Moore, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. And just go ahead and let me know when you want me to change slides.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, hello everyone. I'm so glad you're here. Since you can't see me on the Zoom, I put in a photo. This is what I used to look like on the left. And now that we are in the pandemic, this is what I look like on the right. Because we can't really do Zoom meetings with our animal patients, we have to go to work every day. And so that means we all wear masks so that we can work safely together. And you can see one of our new special shelter guests in my lap there under the mask. And that is a little baby pig. Her name is Matilda. And one of Kat and my coworkers is fostering her. So she's giving that little baby pig a home while it gets older and until it's weaned and is no longer drinking milk from a bottle. And then it will get adopted. But it's been a special celebrity in our shelter, and everyone loves to spend time with it. So she was sleeping in my lap when that picture was taken. So I have been a veterinarian for 25 years, and I've worked at HSSB for 12 of those years. Before that, I used to work in private practice. So kind of like where you would take your dog if you took your dog to the vet or to a vet clinic. And then for the past 12 years, I've been working with the homeless animals. And both of those are really fun, but I really feel like I have a special place at HSSB. So we're going to talk a little bit. It's hard to show you a lot of what we're doing because, we can't do things in person. And so Kat and I decided that if we talked about some x-rays, that might be a good way to show you some of what we do in veterinary medicine. So if you could switch, Kat, that would be great. So an x-ray, a lot of you will know, an x-ray is basically like a photograph that allows us to see inside an animal or a person's body. And some things show up really, really bright, like bones, and some things don't show up quite as well. And when we take x-rays, we lay the animal down in a certain position, and we take 2 positions so that we can kind of get a 3D image in our heads of what the animal looks like. So the x-ray there is on the top, and then the picture of the puppy below is to show you kind of what position the x-ray is. And you can see that green box, and you can see that parts of this puppy's body are cut off on the x-ray. So the puppy's lying there, but the x-ray, the photo didn't take the whole picture. And the x-ray is of a 3-month-old puppy. It is not that particular puppy, but it's of a 3-month-old puppy that came into our shelter. Okay, next view. So this is the same puppy, and you can see what position this is. The puppy is lying on its back with its arms over its head. I was looking for a photo to show you what position it was in, and this cat just did such a perfect pose that even though this isn't an x-ray of a cat, I just had to put that in there to show you. And again, you can see the green box because some parts are cut off. And then we'll go through and learn what all the different parts are that we can see on the x-ray. Okay, so the first x-ray we see on the left is the one where the puppy is lying on its side. And then the second x-ray, the puppy's lying on its back, just like we saw before. And when we take x-rays, we always take those 2 views. And it really helps us to understand where things are. Once you've been doing this for a while and you have some experience, you can kind of picture it really well in your head. Okay. So in this first picture, you can see that I have made the puppy's head kind of a turquoise color. So that's the puppy's head. Anything that looks white is bone. So that's actually the skull or the bones of the head. And then you can see the spine. I made a yellow line there. That's the spine. The green lines show the ribs, and I only marked 2 of the ribs, but there are actually 13 on each side. So you can see those white stripes, those are ribs as well. And then the pink line, which is an extension of the spine, is the tail, the puppy's tail. Okay. And then on this x-ray, you can see the 4 legs or the front legs. So kind of like his arms, but he walks on them. So we call them front legs. Those are in that blue, dark blue. And you can see on the picture where he's lying on his back, his legs are pulled up over his head. And then his back legs are purple. And the pelvis is the part of the bones where the hips are. And that's what you're sitting on right now. You're sitting on your pelvis. And that's pink in this x-ray. Okay. So now we're going to get into some of the more detailed things. So right there, we're looking inside the chest, right? We can see that we're looking inside the ribs, and that's the heart of the puppy. So if you put your hand over your heart and feel your heartbeat, you can actually feel your hard ribs below, and you know that your heart is on the inside of your chest, just like this puppy's. And when we take the x-ray, we're able to actually see it. We're able to see the shape and the size of the heart. We can't see its movement. These are going to be completely still. But we have other ways of doing that. We can use an ultrasound or an echocardiogram, but that's a different machine. And but we can see the movement in that case. But with this, we're going to be able to see the heart and the heart size and the heart shape. Okay. Now around the heart, what we see here are the lungs. And I painted them blue to show that they're filled with air. So anything that's filled with air is going to show up black on our x-ray or really dark. So you can see that the air around the puppy in the room is black. And you can see a dark line or a black line in front of the lungs, and that's actually the windpipe. So that's where the puppy breathes the air through his windpipe and down into his lungs. Okay. Now behind the lungs, now we're looking in the abdomen or the belly of the puppy, and that green right there is the stomach. And again, you see those dark splotches inside the stomach? That is air or gas in the stomach. So as he eats, he's going to swallow some air, And we're able to see that in the x-ray. Okay. Then after the food goes down into the stomach, it goes through the intestines, and the intestines are what actually digest our food and absorb it into our bodies so that we can get all the nutrients out of our food. And the intestines are actually a really, really long hose. They're like a really long hose or a really long tube, but it's all soft and floppy. And so it kind of bunches up there in the abdomen and it just looks like a big blob. But if we were to go in there, maybe we had to do surgery on the intestines, we could actually pull that out like a long hose. Okay. So this is an x-ray that we took of a sick dog. This is Oliver. And Oliver was a huge dog and he came into our shelter and he was a stray. So he didn't have an owner. He was picked up off the street. And we didn't know any history on Oliver. We didn't know where he'd been, who he'd been owned by, what he'd been eating, anything. But he came into our shelter and at first he seemed pretty good. But what we noticed is that every time we fed him, he would vomit after he ate. So he would throw up his food. He'd throw up his breakfast, he would throw up his dinner. And after, a few times of this, we realized something's wrong and we need to take an x-ray and see what's going on. So in this picture, Oliver is lying on his side, just like that beagle puppy we saw. And we can just see the edge of the lungs is that big black triangle on the left. And we can see his spine, which is the white line along the top there. And what we're looking at is his abdomen or his belly. And we can see in there, we can see lots of white things. And if Kat shows the next picture, I made them purple so that you can see even more precisely what I was talking about. So you see all those. And if you go to the next one, Kat, we can see that some of these are in the stomach and some of it is in the intestines. So again, the stomach is green and the intestines are yellow. And these are rocks. So Oliver had actually eaten rocks and swallowed them. And the rocks had gone out of his stomach and into his intestine and plugged it up. So we have that intestine that looks like a hose, but now it's got something plugging it up. So every time he eats, the food goes down and it hits that rock and then it all comes back up and causes him to vomit. And so we can see that this shows up really nicely on our x-ray. Some things don't show up well on the x-rays. I've had dogs that have eaten a sock, for example, and it doesn't show up as nicely. The rocks show up because they have metal in them or they have minerals and they show up nicely on the x-ray. So sometimes we have to kind of take a guess from the way the gas looks in the intestines, whether there's something there. But Oliver was kind enough to eat something we could see on the x-ray. So we actually went in and we did surgery. We opened up his abdomen, we opened up his stomach, and we opened up his intestine or a portion of his intestine. And we removed all those rocks, sewed him up again. And from then on, Oliver was healthy as can be. He was able to eat, all his food was able to pass through properly. He was able to absorb all the nutrients out of his food. So the x-ray was really helpful to us to show us what the problem was. And then we knew exactly what we needed to do to fix it.
Hopefully he never ate rocks again, right, Dr. Moore?
Yeah, and sometimes they don't learn their lesson. So for dogs who have eaten something and had to have surgery, sometimes they have to be watched really closely. We have dogs eat all kinds of weird things. I've removed corn cobs, padlocks, leashes, dog toys, dog bones, removed an earplug once. So all kinds of plastic bags, all kinds of crazy things that dogs and cats will sometimes get into. Okay, we can look at the next x-ray now. So this one is a little pretty obvious what happened here. This is a little dog. And what we're looking at is the dog's leg. And you can see that its paw is there and its paw looks like a hand, doesn't it? You can almost see the fingers on there. So this is the front leg of this little dog. And he had maybe jumped down off a high surface or accidentally been stepped on or jumped out of someone's arms. I'm not sure what his story was, but he broke his leg. And we can see that break really well on this x-ray, because remember how the bones show up really nicely. And so it's clear what we need to do for this guy. He needs surgery to repair that. And we can see in the next x-ray that we did a surgery there, and we went in and we put a plate on the leg. So we actually got a metal plate. It's a special thing. I didn't get it from Home Depot. I ordered it from an orthopedic supply company, and it's made of surgical stainless steel. So it's very fancy plate. Before we put it in the dog's body on his leg, we sterilize it. So we heat it up to a really hot temperature to kill all the germs on it, so that when we go in, we don't bring an infection into the body. We want to make sure there's no germs there. So what I did was realigned the bones. So I put the bones back where they should be, made sure they were nice and straight. And then I actually drilled holes in the bone and put that plate on there using screws. And again, the screws are fancy orthopedic screws. And he will keep that plate in place for the rest of his life. So typically they don't cause a problem, and that will allow the bone to heal. And he will go on. I saw him a few years ago, a few years after his surgery, and he was doing really well. You couldn't even tell he'd ever broken the leg. So you can see, if you've ever had an x-ray, if you've ever broken a bone, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for being able to see that break on the x-ray. Okay. And then here's another x-ray we have. This is a rabbit who came into the shelter, and she just kept getting fatter and fatter and fatter. And we were like, whoa, what is going on with this rabbit? And so we took an x-ray, and I'm going to show you the answer, and then we'll go back and look again. So if you go to the next picture, what you can see there is we can see the turquoise area is a little tiny head, and the yellow line is a little tiny spine, and the green lines are little tiny ribs, and the blue are the front legs, and the pink are the back legs. So this rabbit is pregnant, and we can see all these tiny little babies inside her, all these baby skeletons. And you can see that they're all kind of jumbled over the top of each other, which makes it really hard to see each one individually. And it makes it kind of hard to count how many there are. But I believe she went on to have 13 babies. And these babies, they only show up. So if she's pregnant toward the first part of her pregnancy, those babies will not show up on the x-ray, because the skeletons don't have bone in them yet. The skeletons are still soft and they're not formed, and they haven't got the bony material and the calcium. But toward the end of the pregnancy, then we can see the skeletons, the baby skeletons, show up on the x-ray. Are you able to see all that? It looks like a big jumble, but if you look closely, you can see little round things that are skulls, and you can see little stripes that are ribs. Lots of different ones there. So that's kind of an overview of x-rays. I've given you guys a summary so that next time you see an x-ray, maybe at a doctor's office or maybe on a medical show on TV, you'll be able to have a little bit better idea what you're looking at. X-rays are super useful. I look at x-rays probably 2 or 3 times a day in my job to try and find out what's going on with some of our sicker patients.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moore. That was really interesting. I learned something every time.
Good, good.
Okay, so everyone say, thank you, Dr. Moore.
You're welcome. And then the last picture, those are my 2 animals. You can see my pets.
Oh.
Rosie and my cat's name is Pants.
Rosie and Pants?
Yes.
How cute. Thanks so much, Dr. Moore. And thank you
You're
to
welcome.
Rosie and Pants.
You guys take care.
All right, my friends. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Dr. Moore always has such cool stories about the things that she sees in the animal shelter where we work. So I want to talk about, since some of you might be animal lovers yourselves, and maybe you have been thinking, wow, it would be really cool to be a veterinarian or an animal doctor like Dr. Moore. And I think that's great. But I also wanted to make sure that you knew about other jobs that you could have if you want to work with animals when you're grown up. So there are some really cool options out there. And if you have questions about any one of them, make sure to send me a chat in the chat feature, okay? Because this is something that I'm happy to talk to you about if you have any interest. So one of the first jobs that you might have if you worked at an animal shelter is an animal control officer. And you can see this is one of the officers that we know, Officer Riley, and she's found a big dog, a very special kind of dog called an Irish wolfhound. And they're some of the tallest dogs in the world. They're really big. Like a lot of you could probably ride the dog if the dog didn't mind, but probably the dog would mind. So animal control officers, if you guys have seen movies like Secret Life of Pets, or any animated movie that has animals in it, the animal control officers are sometimes the bad guy. And that's just fine for a movie, but in real life, they are so important to helping animals. And I just want to make sure you guys know that the job that they do is really helpful to animals, and they're not bad guys at all. So animal control officers, some of the things that they do, they rescue animals that need help. So that might be a lost kitty, or maybe a dog that's been living on the street for a long time and people in the neighborhood have become concerned. Or it could even be injured wildlife. So the picture you see up here, this is another animal control officer, and he is holding in that cage a bunch of ducklings, so baby ducks. And the reason he was called out by these people was because the mama duck had lost her ducklings in a sewer, so in a storm drain. And she was so upset. This mama duck was quacking and she wouldn't leave the drain. And the people they looked in and they could see the baby ducks, but they couldn't get them out. So this animal control officer, he came and he got those ducklings out of the drain, back with mom, safe and sound. And then he found a nice pond to release them to. So a much safer place for them to live than, in someone's neighborhood on the street, right? Ducks belong in the water. So that's the kind of thing that they do. They're really heroes for animals. They also sometimes have to go out and investigate situations. They're like detectives, and they look into situations where animals might be unsafe somehow. And they make sure that people are following animal-related laws. So a really basic law that many of you might know about is we're supposed to keep our dogs on leash outside. There are sometimes places where you are allowed to let your dog off leash, but for the most part, we are supposed to keep our dogs on leash. So an animal control officer might come out to talk to someone who's been letting their dog run around on the street and, be in danger of getting hit by a car or something. So that's one of the other things that animal control officers do, is they make sure that people are following the law, and those laws are there to keep animals and people safe. And then finally, they're teachers. They do a lot of work educating the community about animal safety and why it's important to be kind to animals. So animal safety, really simple things are like which dogs you should and shouldn't pet, right? If you see a dog that's tied up outside and it's growling, you'd be surprised how many people go ahead and pet that dog, even though they shouldn't. So animal control officers help teach people which situations with animals are safe and when we should keep our hands to ourselves or when we should call for a professional. So those are some of the things that animal control officers do. Another really cool job that you could explore is as an animal care technician. And that's my coworker, Dawn, right there. She's really cool and has a lot of different reptiles and amphibians. She has a tortoise at home. She has salamanders. She knows how to work with animals of all kinds. And animal care technicians, it's kind of a fancy way of saying someone who takes care of animals. So here is another one of our animal care technicians. And this doesn't look very exciting, but he's cleaning. And that is a big part of what animal care technicians do, because especially in an animal shelter, we need to make sure all the animals are comfortable, that the place they're living in is healthy, warm, dry, safe, and that if any animals are sick, that they don't get other animals that are also living in the shelter sick, right? They need to, be able to get better on their own and not get anyone else sick. They also get to feed and water the animals. So as you can imagine, they tend to be really popular because animals love people who feed them for the most part. And then the really cool part of their job is they just get to observe how the animals are doing. So maybe they have been feeding the same dog for a whole week, and they notice on day 3, this dog seems kind of sad. In the first couple days, the dog wanted to interact with me, and now the dog just lies there when I come in. I think I need to tell someone so we can make sure this dog doesn't stay sad, right? So they are really important in terms of noticing what's going on with the animals in their care and making sure that they get everything they need. And then, of course, if you just love to pet animals and get to know them and love on them, being an animal care technician could be a fun job for you, because they get to just handle the animals and meet them and get to know them. And it's very rewarding. So this is a great job as well. But just know that it involves a lot of cleaning. Next up, we have a veterinary technician. So this is my coworker, Nadia, and she is a fantastic veterinary technician. And again, this is another pretty fancy way of saying animal nurse. So like Dr. Moore is a doctor for animals, these folks are nurses for animals. So they do a lot of different stuff, but the most important things that they do include helping the veterinarians with when they do examinations and when they do surgeries. Oh, I see a question. What is my job? That is a really good question. I do something that's not on this list. I actually work as a fundraiser for our organization. So because we don't charge money for things, we have to get all the money that we need to take care of animals from people who care. So people make donations to our organization so that we can help. And my job is to make sure that people know how to do that and help them learn what we're doing so that they know what their donation is supporting. So that's a great question. And in the past, I've done other things as well. And I'm also a volunteer. So I like to help out with the rabbits especially, but thank you for asking. So veterinary technicians, again, the nurses, they give treatments to animals that the veterinarian says they need. So again, the doctor decides what needs to be done. And a lot of the time it's the technician who's doing it. So if the doctor says this dog needs antibiotics, the veterinary technician is the one who's actually giving the dog the pill or the injection. So they do all kinds of stuff. They're very hands-on. If you just love working with animals and love to help animals that are sick, this could be a really cool job for you as well. And there is so much more that I couldn't even get to, but veterinary technicians are really important. I just want to emphasize that because I think they're really cool. All right. There's also cool things like becoming an animal groomer. This is my dog's groomer, Rachel. She actually used to work at Humane Society, Silicon Valley, and now she has her own business. And as you can see, this is one of her cute little customers. It's a little Yorkie. But Rachel is really awesome. People and dogs alike really love her. So animal groomers, it's kind of in the name. Their job is to keep animals clean. So they give them baths, they give them haircuts. They also do things like trim their nails. Sometimes our dogs and cats' nails get really long and they scratch us even when the animal doesn't mean to. So groomers can help with that. They also have to be really good at working with people, right? Because they can't have their animals come in without a person bringing them. So they need to be able to work with customers. keep track of appointments and take payments, things like that. And of course, they need to know they need to be really good at handling animals. Because if you're an animal groomer, you're not just going to get really sweet, lovey, nice puppies and kitties, right? Sometimes you get dogs that are a little grumpy, maybe a cat that doesn't like to be touched in a certain place or doesn't like to be held. So they are really good at what they do because they can handle those animals safely and also do things like give them baths and haircuts at the same time. So this is also a job that you can learn a lot doing. And this dog is looking kind of unhappy about getting a bath, but I don't know many dogs who are stoked about that. All right, the last one I'm going to talk about, and again, these are just a few of the jobs that are available, but these are some of the ones I thought you might find really exciting. So the last one we're going to talk about is an animal behavior professional. And the reason we call it that is because there are lots of different levels you could be. You could be a veterinary behaviorist, which is a doctor like Dr. Moore, who specializes in understanding animal behavior and helping animals with problems they might have with their behavior. So kind of like a doggy and cat psychiatrist. But it can also just be people who work in the shelter who are really good at understanding animals and how to help them. So they spend time with every single animal that comes into our shelter. They get to know them. They learn about their personalities. They find out what they need. So for example, if you had a dog come in that maybe had only ever lived outside before and hadn't had very nice experiences with people, our behavior professional would come up with a plan to help that dog become more comfortable with people so that when it got adopted, it would be happy with its new family and know how to be a great pet. So that's just one example. And they also help out a lot with our volunteers who come in to socialize the animals. Socialize really just means have fun. So they come in, they keep the animals company, they pet them, they play with them. And the behavior professionals can explain to them just how to do that safely and what animals might need what kind of socialization. So again, they're very important. And then last but not least, they are really helpful for people. So if you adopt an animal or you already have a pet that might be having some behavior problems. So maybe you have a cat that you just love, great kitty, but your cat has started going potty outside of the litter box. And no matter what you do, you cannot get your cat to go back in the litter box. A behavior professional can help you with that. They can explain maybe why the cat is doing that and how you can correct the behavior. So some of these things that they handle are really normal and very common things. And then they also help with things that are not so normal. So there's a lot of variety out there in their work, but they are really helpful in terms of keeping pets in the homes that they already have when something's maybe not quite right. And then also for getting animals that aren't perfect, right, that have had experiences that maybe made their lives a little harder, finding families for them and helping those families understand how to take good care of them. So animal behavior professionals, again, are a really important part. And again, if you like to play with animals, or you think that you're really good at understanding animals and being gentle and sweet with them when they're scared, this could be a great career for you. All right, because we only have 10 minutes left, I want to go over just some of the basics with you guys because I've gathered from our chat that many of you have pets at home. And so I think that a lot of you will know the information that's in here, but I want to make sure that everyone is familiar in case you don't have a pet. Maybe you've never had a pet, but you'd like to get one. These are just some of the basics you need to know how to keep your pet happy, healthy, and safe. And here, I really want the experts to chime in. So if there's something that you know about keeping your pet happy, healthy, or safe, feel free to write in the chat, say what you do, because that's great. And thank you, Melissa. So if I'm going to get through this pretty quickly, it's a quick lesson, and then we'll open it up for questions. But it sounds like Melissa's going to keep it open just a little longer in case we go over 3 o'clock. All righty. So the main question I ask kids when talking about this is when you're thinking about what your pet needs to be happy, healthy, and safe, think about what you need to be happy, healthy, and safe. So what's one of the most basic things? We all need a roof over our heads, right? We need a place where we can be warm and dry and safe from the weather outside, where we can sleep and eat and do all the things that we do with our families. You probably also need a bed to sleep in. I don't know about you, but I don't enjoy sleeping on the floor. It's not very comfortable and I don't sleep very well and I feel grumpy. So it is important to have a nice soft bed. We also need love and affection, right? That's something that you can't buy, but it's something that makes a world of difference in how happy we are. If there are people in our lives who care about us and want to spend time with us, that's really helpful. Above, also toys, right? We don't want to just live a boring life. We want to have fun stuff to do. We want to learn about new things. So having toys to keep us busy and entertained, that's an important thing as well. We all need food and water to survive. So it's important to feed your pet healthy, good quality dog or cat food. Yeah, I mean, we can't skip it, right? It's not like if we feel like feeding our pets, they need to have a feeding schedule that we keep up with. So that's a big job. And then finally, we also need to groom them, keep them clean. We wouldn't want to go, months without a bath or brushing our teeth. So we need to help our animals do that. And that can be a tricky one because animals don't always agree that that's something they need, but it is, especially if they have fleas or maybe they've rolled in something gross outside. A bath can be a very important part of their care. I also want to talk a little bit about their medical care. So Dr. Moore is the kind of person you would want to talk to if your pet needed a checkup. So just like us, we all need to go to the doctor regularly, even when we're feeling just fine, because sometimes we need shots, we need to get weighed, see if our weight is healthy, let doctors know if anything weird has been going on, like maybe my throat's been scratchy every day for some reason. So it's really important that we go see that our pets go see their doctors frequently. And puppies and kittens, just like babies, baby humans, they need to go to the doctor even more often. So a good thing to know is that if you adopt a puppy or a kitten, you can expect that they are going to need to go to the doctor when they're 8 weeks old and get their first shots and their first examination. And then after that, they actually need to go 5 times within the first year because babies need a lot of care, right? They're more vulnerable. They don't have the same ability to fight off illnesses that adults have. So going to the doctor and getting regular healthcare is super important. And it can be expensive. So that's something that is important to know before you adopt an animal, is that to know that you're going to be able to take care of them or know where you can go. Oops, I skipped ahead a little bit. So for adult animals, usually they can get away with going to the vet just once a year. But of course, if they get sick or have an accident, we would need to go in right away. So again, that's something that we can't always plan for. And we need to know ahead of time which doctor we're going to take them to, what time they're open, right? If my dog gets sick in the middle of the night, I need to know where there's an emergency hospital open. And this is a really important one that I think a lot of people don't realize is such a big deal for keeping their pets safe. And that is having collars, ID tags, and microchips. So a collar, I think you guys probably all know what that is, but it's basically just a necklace that the animal wears. And then on there is the ID tag. And all it is just a little tag that says, this cat's name is Percy, and he belongs to Joe and Beth, who you can call at this phone number and live at this house. So that way, if Percy ever gets out on accident or gets lost, whoever finds him will know exactly where he needs to go. And a microchip is sort of like an ID tag that animals wear inside. It's about the size of a grain of rice. It's teeny tiny, so small that we can actually inject it under their skin. I know that sounds really weird, but it doesn't hurt. It's kind of like getting your ear pierced or something. But it's this teeny tiny little chip that just sits under their skin and it can't fall off like an ID tag can. And so that way, if that dog got lost, didn't have its collar, if you took that lost dog to an animal shelter or a veterinarian, they would be able to scan the chip and information would pop up on the scanner and they would be able to know who the owner was. So microchips are really, really helpful. And all the animals that any animal you adopt from Humane Society Silicon Valley would come with a microchip. And you would just need to make sure that your information was in there. So, and then of course for dogs, we always need to keep our dogs on leash because we need to keep them safe from cars. Even if your dog is really well trained and always stays right next to you, you never know what might happen, right? A car could scare them, a loud noise could scare them, maybe another animal chases them, and they could run right into the street and have an accident. And I've unfortunately seen that happen quite a lot, and I would never want it to happen to you guys. So I just really want to emphasize that keeping your dog on a leash is an act of love, and that is how we're going to keep our dog the safest. So that is pretty much it for me. We're really near the end here. So I just want to put up one last slide because our time together was limited. If you have any questions or want to talk to me, I put my email address up here and then also our website. So if you just want to learn more about what our organization does, see a lot of cute pictures, you can go check out our website. If you want to ask me something specifically, you can go ahead and email me. And then parents, if you feel moved to make a donation to our organization, you can scan this little code right here and our donations link will pop up. But that's totally optional and also available on our website. I see a question from Evan asking how to tame chickens. That is a really good question. I have lived with chickens before, but they weren't mine. So I don't know exactly how to tame them other than most animals, if you want them to be tame, you want to spend a lot of time with them and show them that you're safe because some animals think that people just want to eat them. And that's why they'll run away from us and things like that. So if you're very patient with a chicken, spend time with it, feed it, take care of it, that's probably the best way. Yeah, chickens do get mad really quickly. I would say just be really, be really respectful. They might not want the same things we want. Like if we want to pick them up, that might not be something they're so interested in. So even though we really want to, we'll just go ahead and not pick them up unless we really have to. Does anyone else have any questions?
It's okay if you want to unmute yourself to ask your question.
Yeah.
I hear somebody. Nope. All right. Thank you so much. So I was curious, how many animals can you have at the shelter at one time? It seems very, very big.
It is a big shelter, and it's a tough question to answer, Melissa, just because so many of the animals in our care actually live in foster homes. So even though they aren't adopted yet, they'll go to a volunteer's home and live with them to wait until they get adopted. So it can really, it's a very wide range, but I would say physically at our animal shelter, oh gosh, maybe 100.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot. And it depends on the time of year and what kind of animals.
Evan, do you have your hand raised? Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah. Do you have any do you know how to like restore hair on like dogs?
That's
Because my dog actually chewed off all the hair on her tail. And now her tail's like all black.
Oh, baby. Well, that sounds, I'm not a veterinary professional, but just having had dogs that were itchy before, that sounds like she might have some skin sensitivity or even an infection. So sometimes dogs get rashes just like we do, and cats as well, but they don't have fingernails to scratch with as much. So they'll often use their teeth, right? They'll chew on it to scratch the itch. So, and they don't really know to stop or that they want to keep their hair. So I would say probably the best thing to do would be to visit a veterinarian and have them take a look at it to see what's going on, because they might be able to recommend a medication or see if your dog has an allergy that's making it really itchy. But usually chewing off fur is related to some kind of skin condition. That's a great question.
All right, Donovan, Do you have your hand raised? We have so many polite people on our field trip today. I love it. Donovan, do you want to ask a question?
What do you feed the animals?
What do we feed the animals? Well, we feed cat food to the dogs and dog food to the cats. Just kidding. We feed dog food to dogs and cat food to cats. So usually that's kibble. We get a kibble that's made by a professional dog or cat food company. So it has all the nutrients that they need. And it just depends on how big the animal is. We'll measure out different amounts. Rabbits eat things like hay. The main part of their diet is hay. So they actually get unlimited amounts of hay. They also get like a nice salad every day, right? Lettuce or kale. And sometimes they get pellets too. So really depends on the animal, but we always want to make sure we feed them food that's meant for them and not people food.
All right, Marissa and Mallory, you have your hand raised.
I wanted to ask, can you train hamsters to do tricks?
You know, I think you can. There are so many cool videos on YouTube from people who have hamsters, and rats are actually really good at learning tricks. But I have never personally had a hamster, so I've never trained one, but I think there are some basic things that you could probably teach a hamster how to do. So.
My husband taught a hamster how to run a maze when he was in middle school.
That is very cool. Food is a great motivator. Most of us can learn something in order to get some food.
It worked for me.
Right?
Evan, you raised your hand. You have another question? Or Marissa and Mallory, did you have another question or was that it?
That's it.
Okay, and Evan, you have another question?
Yeah. There's another question for like health and stuff, but what do you recommend if your dog has like a giant growth, like a red growth?
Yeah, again, that's something that you would want a veterinarian to check out because growths are really common. People get them too, especially as we get older. And sometimes a growth doesn't mean much at all. It's just this weird lump that started to grow, but it's not going to hurt us in any way. It's just kind of strange. And so a lot of times those lumps, we just leave them alone. But doctors usually want to take a sample of the tissue that's in that lump, right? And then they use a microscope or a laboratory to find out what kind of tissue it is, because it also could be a type of cancer. And if it's a type of cancer that's that might spread, then we might need to go ahead and remove the tumor or provide some other types of treatment. So it's really hard for me to say as someone who's not a veterinary doctor, but it's something that it's really important to keep an eye on and make notes if you notice that it grows or changes, because doctors need to know the history behind it a lot of the times in order to make a guess as to what it is.
Okay, and this is just as a comment.
Mm-hmm.
My dog actually, it's like her back leg, and she actually needs to take pills to like, so that she can actually like walk up like the stairs and stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, it sounds like your dog might be on the older side, and just like people, dogs and cats can get arthritis as they get older. So it just means their joints get stiffer. They're not as flexible as they were when they were younger. And it can be kind of painful, right? Sometimes like they wake up or they've been sleeping for a long time, or maybe it's cold outside and the joint just gets really stiff. So that medication helps them feel more comfortable and helps them be a little bit more springy, right? So they can do all the old things that they used to do. But that is really common, and it's not a sign that your dog is unhealthy. It's mostly just a sign of getting older.
It happens to all of us.
It does. So it's good that you're giving your dog the medication that she needs to feel comfortable. That's really great.
Are there any other questions? No. Well, thank you, Miss Cat.
My pleasure.
That was wonderful. I learned so much today. So thank you so much for sharing with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Thank you guys for being such a great audience. And I do hope if you feel like it, you go ahead and reach out, because we love to hear from kids. And I want to say how much we miss having you guys come to the shelter in person, and we can't wait to see you once that's safe.
Yes. And we recorded this and I'm going to put it up and I'll send an email to all your parents and I'll include this contact information in that email just in case you think of another question after we leave.
Awesome. All
All
right.
right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good Wednesday.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you.